Galactic Standard Date. Year 11356. Day 90. Sol Standard Date 4th of the 2nd, 3267. Catherine knew that Uncle Bassie could and would protect her and the rest of the fleet. Yet still she was scared. Not for herself and not for the floofies. She was scared for Basilisk himself. She gripped the armrest of her chair in her bedroom. Her pet fox, Haruhi, that Basilisk had given her for her birthday 1,000 years ago, jumped up to her lap and looked her in the eye. "I have been with you for 1,000 years, Mother, yet somehow you still seem to me like the child that adopted me all those years ago," she said. Catherine smiled and started scratching behind Haruhi's ear. "That's because Dad would be sad if I had sworn myself to rage or consigned myself to an eternal sadness. I certainly wouldn't have managed to do it without you, though. You were all I had after everyone left. That is, until Uncle Bassie came back alive from the veil," she said. Haruhi stood up to Catherine's face and rubbed their noses together, prompting a laugh from Catherine. "You would have been just fine without me, Catherine. You are a strong girl. Most of the humans had begun to give in to defeatism before Basilisk came back into the scene. I remember when we were watching the news of his dramatic return from the veil. He dropped into the middle of the siege of a rune on Mars. He cut a swath through all those Azarians as if they were made of wet tissue paper. I can still hear the cries of joy from the announcers in the garrison, let alone your cries of joy. The moment you found out that you were no longer alone was beautiful, Catherine," she said, as she curled up onto the now significantly more relaxed Catherine. Catherine started crying as she petted Haruhi. Saran had come to visit his goddess. He knocked on her door and waited. When the door fell away, he kneeled, expecting his goddess of healing. Instead, he was greeted by a Kintanjo. No, not a Kintanjo. Saran stumbled a little as the realization sunk in that he was looking at the evolutionary cousin of the Kintanjo he knows, rather than an actual Kintanjo. "Who? No. What are you?" he asked. Haruhi looked the attendee up and down. "My name is Haruhi. I am Catherine's best friend and daughter. She needs some time alone, so you'll be dealing with me. What do you need?" she said. Saran was taken for a loop. The voice he was hearing was clearly not coming from the creature before him. It was almost like she was talking directly into his mind, yet he was certainly hearing her voice through his ears. "Well, I just wanted to converse with the lady. Is that going to be all right?" he asked. Haruhi stuck her tongue out. "No, Mama's crying. She needs left alone," she said, as the door reformed, barring any further conversation. Saran teleported back to the bridge and sat with the other two attendee. "What's the situation out there, guys?" he asked. Just before Valenthy could answer, a blinding light filled the bridge as the main cannon of the Glory to the Emperor fired a beam of light that could have completely engulfed most suns. The attendee gasped as they got to witness the weapons of the gods in action. Valthan had run up to the glass on the bridge and smashed his face to it so that he might get a better look at the weapon and what it just fired. He was wearing a smile that would put the Joker to shame. Valenthy was more focused on the rift that the weapon had shot towards. "What on Venetia is that?" she yelled, as she began to make out the features of the Azarian warlord. Saran had been a xenobiologist for well over 90 years, and all he could think about was how it looked like a Yambi that had been turned into a nightmare. Jeff walked up behind Valenthy and poked her little arm. "That monster is called an Azarian. I believe that Catherine gave you a very short rundown when we first met you. That was, however, just the tip of the iceberg. The Azarians come in many shapes and sizes. That is but one of the larger ones," he said calmly. Valenthy looked back at Jeff. "How are you so calm right now? Are we in pretty big danger if things like that are coming in?" she asked. Jeff just laughed. "With the Glorious One himself here with us? Nay, we are under no threat. If he willed it, I'm sure he could kill that thing with his bare hands," he said, with a gleam in his eye. Saran cocked his head. "Who's the Glorious One?" he asked. Alan, Ashley, Nadia and Jeff collectively facepalmed. Alan looked at Saran and yelled from across the room, "Bro! You literally had an audience with the Emperor, and you didn't even know who you were talking to?" he yelled. Valenthy pinched her forehead. "The only other person we've really met was the big badass metal guy with the cool spikes and black fire. she said. Jeff sighed. That was him. The big metal man that you met. He was literally the emperor of all mankind, he said. Ashley was trying to stifle a laugh, and Nadia had buried her face in her hands. Saran's eyes widened. The emperor is Uncle Bassie? He yelled.